What's the worst thing your boyfriend or girlfriend has done to you? I'm posting this for my fiance, about me. The other night I was sick with the flu. I also ate something that had upset my stomach. On top of the flu because I'm an idiot. We went to pick up some medicine for me, and on the way home, I told him to floor it because I needed to retch and have diarrhea at the same time. Oh, did I mention that we were visiting his parents at the time? It was splendid. By the time we got to his parents' house, I sprinted to his bathroom and decided to take care of the mess first. Well, after taking the number 2 of a lifetime, I clogged the toilet. Panicking, I grabbed the plunger and tried to unclog the toilet. The toilet water stopped flowing when it reached the top, and because I wasn't stupid enough, I thought to myself, let's try to flush the toilet now. So I flushed, again. The water began flowing over the rim of the bowl. My mess was plopping over onto the floor. At this point, I'm freaking out. By freaking out, I mean my brain has stopped working and I'm laughing like a hyena because the only other option is to cry. Now my fiancé is worried because he thought I was throwing up so bad it sounded like laughter. He knocked on the locked door. Bacon Blossom? Are you okay? Honey, I need your advice through the locked door. What happened? Just let me in. No. After much arguing, I opened the door. He looks at me standing in an inch of water holding a plunger. He then looks at the bathroom floor with my little nuggets clinging happily to every surface. His mouth just dropped open. It was then I started bawling. Let me wake up my mom. I can't find a mop. He struggled between his own gags. If you love me, you will tell her it's your mess. What? I swear to God, if you want to marry me, you will take the blame for this and tell her it's your mess. Needless to say, I don't do well under pressure. He ended up getting some towels and cleaning up my mess off the floor. So I'm pretty sure this is the worst thing any girl has ever done to him. If he helps clean up the mess, he's a keeper. Story 2. I was 22. This was about 10 years ago. I had a girlfriend, let's call her Sophie, and it was my best friend's 21st birthday party. Let's call him Tim. The party was amazing. About 40 to 50 people, tons of drinks, a hot tub, people dancing everywhere, girls in bikinis. It was great. For the first couple of hours, I drank a little. I was in the hot tub with Sophie, talking to her, kissing her, hugging her. We had been together for about 2 to 3 years, something like that. Anyway, she always said she wanted to try a drink, and I remember that my parents had some at my house. A bottle of Jack Daniels. As I was slightly hammered, I thought it was a good idea to get it, so I set off. When I got there, I received a text from Sophie asking me how long I was going to be. I told her about half an hour. After sending the text, I realized I could get there in about 5 minutes if I used my bike, so I did. When I arrived at the party, it was apparent that Sophie was not in the hot tub, so I searched the place. I found Tim and Sophie having intimacy in Tim's bedroom. I was horrified. I love this girl so much. I dropped the drink, walked out, and proceeded to cry my eyes out on the stairs. My other friend, let's call him James, comes over and asks me what's wrong. I told him what had happened, and he raced up the stairs. The next thing I see is James hurting Tim. James then gets everyone's attention and tells them what Tim and Sophie have done. Tim and Sophie were made outcasts, and James is now my best friend. James is a bro for life. Story 3. When I was a freshman in high school, I got my first boyfriend. He was a year older and seemed like a cool guy with similar interests. Within the first month, we went to see The Rundown. The date started out pretty normal, and we were the only people in the theater. He started trying to mess around, which was something my prude self wouldn't allow. During the scene in which a monkey jumps on the rock's face, he decided that he wanted to have intimacy. In the theater. I hurt him hard enough and often enough that he gave up. Wisely, I didn't say bye after that. Later in the weekend, we were at his father's house for his band practice. He said he'd like to go into the sauna with me. I should go in and wait. He was just finishing up. After a few minutes, I wondered where he was and decided to check. He had barricaded the door so I couldn't get out and informed me that it was punishment for what happened at the movies. It seemed like forever of me complaining that I was thirsty and my head hurt until he let me out, and I ended up passing out on the floor of his basement. Gigantic red flag number 2 was still not enough to make me get out. I told him that the things he did to me weren't right and he promised to change. When he didn't and I tried to break up with him, he threatened to end it all. After that, he became more vicious. I dumped him then. He ended up in the hospital because he attempted to end it all. I went back, they didn't change his habits, and I finally decided that I didn't care if he lived or passed away after he harmed me. He tried to end himself 3 more times and ended up in the psych ward. For months after he got out, he continued to call me. For the rest of high school and until I moved away, I made it my personal mission to tell every girl he dated that he was a schmuck who no human being should ever willingly endure. 3 of them came to me after with pretty horrible stories and thanked me for warning them so they got out before things got as insane as they did for me. Story 4. Mine's not nearly as bad as some of the terrible things I've read in this thread, but I'll go ahead anyway. Basically, I started dating a girl at an early age. She meant everything to me, and I loved her more than anything. We both traveled together for 6 years after 6th form, and when we were older, we decided we should go to university so that we could get better jobs in the future. She missed the application date, and I ended up going to university a year before her. I ended up driving back to our hometown every weekend to see her, effectively messing up any social life I had with university friends. She never actively encouraged me to do this, but would always say how much she appreciated it and that she would do the same for me because she loved me more than anything. And to be honest, I was more than happy to do it just to see her for the short time we had. When it came her time to go to uni, she ended up going to a uni far away from where I was. I thought, not a problem. We don't have to see each other all the time. We'll work it out. And she always told me about how we'd move in together after we'd both finished. 2 weeks into her first semester, she started ignoring my calls. She eventually rang me after a week of not answering her phone and asked to meet back at her hometown. She broke up with me that night, saying, I never wanted a relationship. When we started dating, it sort of spiraled and I didn't know how to get out. Now, before anyone says the obvious, yes, I know that this is a perfectly reasonable explanation for breaking up with someone. People get into these relationships they don't want and feel tremendous guilt about breaking up with them. But I really, really wish she had just turned around after a year or 2 years. Hell, even when I was spending hundreds of pounds on petrol to get back and forth to uni to see her. I just said that then. I never understood why she thought it was better for her to be miserable and string me along for almost 7 years and just end it. I'd spent all the time thinking I was in a mutually loving relationship with a girl of my dreams. I was constantly happy. I thought of myself as the luckiest guy on the planet, and it was all just gone. We remained best friends, and when we finished uni, we saw each other every day. Until she found a new boyfriend. At which point, she put me out of her life completely. It was like losing her again. She remains friends with my friendship group, and they frequently all go out together and don't invite me. But that's another matter completely. I know it doesn't seem horrible compared to some of the stuff in this thread, but from the moment she said what she said, I've just felt pathetic and moronic. It's been 5 years since I last talked to her, and I still haven't even kissed another girl. I literally get panicked even when thinking about starting another relationship again. It just terrifies me. Since we stopped seeing each other as friends, I've basically gone through a pattern of depression and misuse. Every now and then I'll get my act together and stop feeling stupid, but I'll hear from one of my best friends about how they'd all gone out bowling or something and it all floods back. Story 5. My ex did a lot of really mean, horrible things to me. The one that most stands out was the NYE, which also happened to be the eve of our first year anniversary. My ex and his buddy were supposed to come pick me and my friend up from down the street from my house so we could go over to my ex's and celebrate and have our 3rd or 4th experiment with drinks. So me and my friend are waiting for them to come pick us up, keep calling them and rolling to their voicemails. I don't want to go back to my place because my mom already hated my ex for other things he had done to me. So we just keep waiting and waiting for them. 2 hours roll by and we're still waiting in the freezing December night. Right about when we decide this really isn't worth it, my ex and pal come barreling down the road to pick us up. We hop in and ask them what took them so long, and we got a lame excuse about how they were trying to get drinks, but it took a few unsuccessful attempts. So we get to my ex's and we start drinking. I get 3 or 4 drinks, and my ex decides now is the time to tell me what really took them so long. Remember, this was one of the first times I was hammered. Apparently, they decided to stop over at another girl's dorm house to say hey. No problem there, but somehow they ended up having intimacy from 3 girls. What in the world? I hear this, of course, tears start forming. I was left in the cold waiting for my boyfriend while he was being intimate with these girls from my school who were my friends, and realizing my first year anniversary with the guy I loved was going to be bad. He sees the tears in my eyes and says one of the most hurtful things that still lingers with me today. Oh, don't be emotional. Everyone hates an emotional girl. Don't ruin the night for everyone. Told me that in front of both friends, neither of which stood up for me. I thought it really was my fault and I was going to ruin the night for everyone. So I decided to put it in the back of my mind and pretend it didn't happen. Thankfully, the next day I did a 180 with my thoughts and called him on it. We broke up shortly after that awesome anniversary discussion. To top it all off, I talked to my friend that went to the girls' house with my ex and 3 girls. Apparently, he pretty much forced himself. None of them felt comfortable with it and didn't want to do anything. It made it so much worse to realize he really made me think it was all my fault. Didn't care about me, left me in the cold, Made other girls really uncomfortable so he could get what they wanted from them, and really just didn't care about me. Made it my fault in my eyes. Story 6. We'll probably get buried here, but here we go. I moved to another state to date this guy I had known and had been friends with for about a year. We moved in together and dated for over 2 years. I gave him my V card and pretty much took care of him because he was a man-child who spent all of his money on video games and action figures, but I was okay with it because we got along great. He's slightly overweight, has been his entire life, and before we dated was always getting friend-zoned by girls, so I never thought he would cheat on me. So of course, he cheated on me. A lot. The entire time we were dating, with several girls, one of which was married, her husband watched. Some of them knew he had a girlfriend, some of them didn't. Some of them he had intimacy with. Anyway, the best part is when we eventually broke up and he moved out, he took the bed with him, which was fine since I was about to move, and tried to steal my pillows. Yes, we actually had an argument over pillows, which I had bought, while his friend who was helping him move stood by and watched. At that point, I was pretty much over everything that had happened, but he was going to have to pry those pillows out of my cold fingers before I gave them to him. Story 7. My ex went out of town with her dad. They went via train from Phoenix to Seattle. The second night she was on the train, she was being very sketchy to me and not answering many of my texts. She finally called me and sounded a little intoxicated. We talked for a couple of minutes and she said, "Hold on, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I'm just ordering another drink." She also mentioned that she became good friends with a bartender. Keep in mind she was 22 at the time, so she doesn't call me back for another day or two. I'm a little weirded out, but I don't really question much. When she got back, everything was cool for a couple weeks. She then told me that her and her dad needed to go to LA for a weekend to do stuff about their passports since they were going to Japan the next summer. I researched what you would need to go to LA for regarding your passport. Didn't get any leads. I asked if she was cool if I came out there with her and her dad for the weekend. She was very hesitant and said no, because they were splitting a hotel room. I told her I could pay. One night she gets hammered and passed out in my front seat on the way home. Out of curiosity, I looked in her texts and saw these texts from the bartender from the train. Basically, when she told me she would call me back, she went and had intimacy with this dude. Her dad was also aware of this. I immediately pulled over the car, moved her out on the side of the road. The next day, I reported him to Amtrak. I had his full name and he was fired. Story 8. I had decided to try dating my best guy friend. We were really rough. His ex told me he was cheating on me with her since like the first week of dating. He denied it. I was crazy and in denial about that. He sneaked around and saw her behind my back, lied about it, got caught in lies, would get out to see her hammered with his friends, and was generally just using me. One night I told him that I loved him for the first time. He dumped me the next day, a few days before Valentine's Day. We eventually get back together and the same deal happens. April comes. I was talking to him on Facebook. I screenshot and post some of the conversation in which he was talking down to me. I blur his photo and name and everything. He says we need to talk. A while later, he just barges into my dorm room. He lived nearby. I lived alone and left the door unlocked. He pulls the chair out from under me, yells an order to delete the blog posts and threatens to delete a lot of other things. I push him back. I demand over and over that he leave. I wasn't really sure what to do, so I just locked the door and sat down and wrote out what had happened, posting it to the blog to spite him, I guess. We continue arguing about what happened. He denies everything. He tells me that no one would care if I passed away, that I'm the only reason my mother drinks, and all sorts of horrible things, but denies laying a finger on me. We argue for the better part of the evening. He ends it saying he loves me. For some reason, I bought it. When I told someone about what had happened, he told me I was probably exaggerating and deserved it. I eventually got back with Schmuck. He kept cheating, blah, blah, blah. I tried dating someone in the fall, but it didn't really pan out and went back to him, though not officially together. As of last month, I'm finally no longer speaking to him. We go to the same school, and was paranoid that he'll show up at random or something. When I was dating the other guy, he spotted me in a class, followed me as I ran out of the building on my bike, raced back to my dorm, up to my dorm, and knocked on my door until I ran out to meet someone, throwing threats to talk to security over my shoulder. Story 9. When I was in high school, I thought I was dating the love of my life. We were both really happy and everything was great for such a long time. During the end of my freshman year, things took a turn for the worse. She started to have interest in this guy, and even though she denied it, I could tell she wanted him. I begged and pleaded with her to tell me the truth, and she never did. There was one time where they both skipped a class together and went to an abandoned house while we were still dating. Freshman year comes, and she tells me she has to live a few states down at her dad's house. It was heartbreaking, but I told her I would wait for her. I received texts from her older sister saying she's been talking to some guys and I confront her about it. She freaks out on me, and after a couple of weeks, we patch things up. She comes home early and I'm delighted. I ask her if I can come over the first day she's back, and she says she's too busy unpacking and spending time with her family, which is understandable. The next day comes and she says she's too tired to spend time with me and she was just going to lay in bed all day. And the third day when I asked her, she just left me. She sends me a message over MySpace, lol, saying I'm clingy and that she never wants to see me again. Heartbroken me wah-wahs over her for weeks. I'm at a friend's house about 2 months later and he teaches me how to lurk. I go to her profile and I see that she's been talking to that boy about how great of a night they had. I look in a little deeper and what? They had been dating for 2 days after her and I broke up. I confronted her about this and she said I ruined her birthday and she says she's sorry for everything and she says she's just mentally unstable. Feels bad, man. Sophomore year starts and I stay home one day. She sneaks into my house while she's dating that day and we do lots of stuff. I ask her if we're together again and she says she is and she says she's done with that other boy. Come to school the next day and I expect her and I to be happy together, but she's just being weird around me. I confront her about it and she says she still loves the other guy. Heartbroken me goes home and mopes for a long time, realizing we're not actually together. A few weeks pass by and all the girls in my school hate her. I stick up for her and give her my sweatshirt. I get suspended for 5 days and when I come back, she's no longer there. I didn't see or talk to her for 8 months and even her best friend wouldn't tell me where she was. I got a letter after 8 months from her telling me she's in a mental institution. Needless to say, I'm speechless. We sent letters back and forth for a long time and I thought after she was released, we could be together. She stopped mailing me for 5 months and I became interested in a new girl, but I obviously still have feelings for the crazy girl. One day, Crazy calls me and tells me to come pick her up at a Walmart. I hadn't seen her for about a year, so I sped there without questions. She told me in the car that she had escaped the mental institution and she had nowhere to go. Her mom calls my house and tells me the cops are after me. I drop her off at a gas station so she can meet up with her friends and I haven't seen her since. I realize she's psychotic and found closure. No longer sad about her. The words, witches be crazy, have never been so true. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 10. It was the night of my birthday, which was a big deal because I could finally drink legally in Quebec. Anyway, a friend's uncle owned a bar over there and the entire floor of the bar was reserved for our friends. Everyone I knew was going for my birthday. We were all at the same age and it was going to be an epic first night of drinking legally for me. People I hadn't spoken to in years were telling me over Facebook all week how they were going to make it to this epic party. So that evening, I'm pre-drinking with my girlfriend and some of her friends and we're all getting super stoked for the party. But I noticed my girlfriend has finished almost an entire drink to herself and she was a pretty messy lightweight. But she seemed fine, so whatever. It's all good. We called a cab and got ready to head out. We go to the bar and some of our friends had a few drinks to finish before we headed in, so they went around the corner to chug them. This is when all hell broke loose. My girlfriend instantly switches from sober or mildly buzzed to full-blown hammered. She starts screaming insanely at every person that walks by. Even people from our school who came up to say hi to her are getting screamed at. I tried to tell her to chill, but she's past reasoning at this point. So I tell her I'm going into the bar without her. This, for some reason, brings her back down to sanity level for a moment and she opens her purse to grab her ID to show the bouncer. Oops, guess what? No ID in sight. She's screaming or crying at this point and starts throwing tantrums for no apparent reason. I manage to grab her and walk her to a cab, so we both get in and I tell him to just drive us back to my place. Halfway through the drive, as she's crying or sobbing, the cabbie moves us out. So we walk about the last 20 minutes to my house, but mind you, my birthday is in December in Canada, so it's about negative 20 degrees Celsius out. In case you were wondering, I was more sober than an AA meeting at this point. We finally get to my house and I drag her upstairs and put her in the bed. Go take a shower and throw my clothes in the wash. Go back, put the covers over us and just decide to sleep it all off and try to talk to her about it in the morning. Story 11. Man, this hits pretty close to home right now. I just broke up with my girlfriend. Feeling kind of down right now. My girlfriend was a terrible person, but so manipulative that it was impossible to tell. Honestly, she had me so wrapped up that even after all the crap she put me through, I still can't get over her. I dated her for 2 years. I'm older, 32, and she's 24 now. When we met, she was still in college, but really seemed to have her stuff together. I was actually very impressed with her. Her skill and manipulation is so amazing that even to this day, I'm amazed at how flawlessly she can alter a person's perception of her. So much so, in fact, that I'm having a lot of difficulty getting over her, even though she's probably the worst person I've ever met. She wound up cheating on me with the president of an organization I'm a part of. It was prolonged and unbelievable. She would have intimacy with one of us and then the other a few hours later and was somehow still able to keep it secret. It was honestly one of the worst things I've ever had done to me by another human. We both, the other guy and I, wound up planning to marry this girl. I finally figured it out and confronted her. She convinced me to stay with her. Again, she could manipulate her way out of anything, and I hate that I was so susceptible to her. In any case, after all that, she dumped me out of the blue a few weeks ago, right after I'd put the security deposit down on the apartment she's in now. They also furnished the whole place and was intending to move to NC to be with her. I even had a new job lined up. As it is now, I'm so far in debt due to her and my stupidity that it'll be years before I'm in the black again. Anyway, I'm older than most Redditors, so I want to pass on a bit of advice to the men. Most men are brought up with the thought that women are somehow less likely to do morally reprehensible things. Because of this, sometimes we allow ourselves to be easily deceived. Women are lucky in this regard. They almost expect men to be schmucks. They're always on guard. But guys, let me tell you, women can be spawns of Satan. They can do it with a smile. Don't ever let your guard down, especially if they seem perfect. Story 12. Ex number 1 pretends to be pregnant even though we'd never had intimacy before and claims she's still pure. I advise her that she's not Mother Mary and she breaks up with me for how you treated me when my world was falling down around me. Find out a month later that she was never pregnant and was just testing me. Ex number 2. This is the one that I thought to be the love of my life. We did everything together and had nearly everything in common as well. Was a huge daddy's girl though. Her dad has a completely unexpected stroke and passes away. Girlfriend snaps, but she's getting counseling and things seem like they're getting better. One night I'm talking to her mom in the kitchen about her upcoming birthday. Girlfriend shows up and grabs a weapon and lunges at me while screaming, "Daddy shouldn't be here. He's gone." I had to pin my girlfriend to the ground until the police came to take her away. Ex number 3. Moved across the world to be with this girl. Breaks up with me 6 months later on the week of Christmas. She has major emotional problems and a pretty rough family household, so I'll let her stay with me. I know. Stupid. Arguing constantly over the span of 2 years. Stupid. Until things peak. I tell her I have no respect for her as she's still not done anything with her life in the 3 years I've known her. She flips out. I try to call the police, but she keeps taking the phone out of the wall. Trying to call the police again. She takes out the phone again. I wait outside after calling the police, crying, thinking that I'm going to get arrested and completely ashamed of myself. They arrive and get both of our sides of the story and then basically tell her she had it coming. I don't get arrested and they make her go back to her parents' house. I finally learned to stay away from the crazy. Story 13. I was in high school at the time, this was many moons ago, and started dating Steve. I met him while I was working at the mall, like you do, or did, when you were in high school. He ended up getting moved out of the place he was staying. I felt bad, so I ended up giving him the majority of my pay so he could stay in a hotel or something. A few weeks later, my parents went away for the weekend and the worst party ever happened. Steve ended up stealing some of my mom's jewelry and pawning it. A bunch of other really awful stuff happened that weekend, so I didn't realize at first it was him, the trusting person that I was. Since this was a very small town of less than 2,000 people where everyone knows everyone, the police got involved. I was still in phone contact with Steve, but hadn't seen him since he left my house. I was grounded and he kind of skipped town. He called me and started hinting around at what happened with the jewelry. And it finally dawned on me what had happened. All of this happened while I was at work. I called the police department, I'm really not this much of a stoolie under normal circumstances, and tell them what I think happened. The next day, Steve called wanting to pick up his belongings he had stashed in my closet. My mom called the police to meet him at my house. Steve shows up with his girlfriend, who he had been dating the entire time we were together. The police show up and he's taken away. It turns out that Steve's name was a lie. It turns out that he had been impersonating a singer from a pretty famous local band, and a couple of other things that the passing of time has wiped from my memory. After about 6 months' time, I was on the phone with a friend and the call waiting buzzed in. It was Steve. He tells me that he knows where I live and that he's going to harm me. Normally, something like this wouldn't faze me, but given the situation, I believed him. The next day, I told one of my guy friends who happened to work at the same mall as I did. I was freaking out. Steve shows up at the mall the next day and my buddy, a pretty big, hairy, intimidating guy, proceeds to threaten him in some way that I never saw or heard from him ever again. Until he showed up at the auto parts store where I worked about 5 years later. I don't know if he recognized me, but seeing him threw me into a huge panic. He's the only person in my life who truly frightened me. It's 20 years later, and I'll still have the occasional nightmare about him. Story 14. My first girlfriend and only long-term relationship so far, 2 years and a half. I started dating in my senior year in college. I'd committed myself to 2 jobs so I could pay for a place for us to live and get her through school. She'd been pushing me for intimacy, but I really wanted to wait. She teased me for weeks, so by the end I was craving for intimacy. Skip a few months later and we were pretty much seeing each other every day, even if it was just for an hour. My work and she was still in school. During her senior year of college, she got her first job at a store. Everyone there envied her figure, her physical attractiveness, how witty and smart she was. One day I came to visit her at work, and her manager scolded her after I left her for being the scrawny, dirty, poor boy I was and that she needed to get out and find real man. She wanted to feel older and more mature. As people had treated her when she was younger, but now she was stagnating and not getting that same attention. She was 22 and they took her out clubbing. We didn't drink, but she wanted to fit in with her new, older friends from work. She did this for a few months. Then she slept with a guy. As recounted by a girl at work that disapproved all of this, I came to see her at work a few days later. A Friday, I think it was. It was payday and I had enough money saved that I was going to buy her dinner, dress as nice as I could and tell her my plans to move out together and pay for her post-secondary. She dismissed me over the phone and said she was busy. I can remember I thought I heard someone kissing her neck, but I ignored it as something else. Because I'm her boyfriend and she loves me and that can't possibly be what I thought it was. Fast forward a few more weeks, I got laid off at one of my jobs. They were hit by the recession and they needed to cut back, so they asked if I wanted to stay. I had to do a ton more things. I was stable with my savings, so I thought I could take the extra time to spend with my girlfriend or find a new job. I called her to see if she wanted to hang out, and if I could finally tell her my plans. She was very hesitant and eventually agreed. When we met, she didn't greet me with a kiss and just asked why I wasn't at work. I told her I quit to sound more manly and capable and in control of my life. Turns out she saw it as me being a quitter and told me we needed a break. I was shocked. I was so heartbroken. She said she needed a month to think things through. I called her and tried to meet her at work and give her roses, but when I got there, the one friend, who didn't tell me a thing, said she was probably home. I got there as fast as I could. When I got there, I had to knock 100 times until she opened the door. She was in her bathrobe I bought her. I didn't think twice, but I remember there being extra shoes at her door. I asked her if her dad was visiting, divorced parents, and if it was a bad time. She said no, but that still she wanted me to go away. I gave her the rose and left. The time limit comes up. She asks me to meet. I was there hours early. She walks over to where I'm sitting, wearing sunglasses, tie black jeans, and a black leather jacket. She sits down, takes off her glasses, and tells me how it was a pathetic waste of time and a lot of other things that are painful to bring up. She leaves me quivering and crying. I see her walk out and get picked up in a shiny black BMW, definitely not her mom's or dad's car. The friend who disapproved found where I worked and came to visit me. She brought my ex's best friend with her too. She told me everything. And the best friend too, who wanted to know what was going on with her best friend. They'd known each other for 10 years. She told us how the manager would take them out. The best friend had been wanting to tell my ex that she was not straight so that she could come out to someone, but the ex never wanted to see her anymore. I remember that girl coming out to us, and I was so angry that my ex had turned into some crazy psychopath for no reason. The guy is from an East Indian family that is quite well off, if you can think of a thing that is worth a lot of money and people need it for energy. He owns a small business locally and has employed her as the cute front face that people talk to. She makes a lot of money. She's attending the same post-secondary as me, owns a car, and lives with this guy. Did I mention he's 9 years older than her? By society's standards, she won. I lost. I wonder if I can let myself love again. I wonder if there's love to be had for the dirty poor boy with dreams. Story 15. Let me tell you. He had to go to a 10-hour band practice the Friday of my 21st birthday weekend, even though I told him that I wanted to spend the entire weekend with him. At these practices, the guys drink, troll, and talk about how bad their lives are. They don't perform live and they don't have an EP. I supported his band because I loved him. He got a DUI that night and never came home. He then blamed me for the DUI because he was unable to remember the phone call we had that night where I asked him to sleep where he was and how I wouldn't be mad if he came to see me the next morning. I never demanded that he come see me. His safety was more important to me. He kissed his neighbor at a kickback that I wasn't at. I was chill with the situation because I get that mistakes happen, so I just said, don't let it happen again. 2 weeks later, he flirted with a girl at a New Year's party and didn't hang out with me the entire night. Later that night, he was hammered and we were trying to sleep. It's about 4 a.m. He disrespected me. After all of this, I was then upset over the previous kiss. Apparently, I was at fault for being upset at him because I was upset over false pretenses, in his eyes, of course. He thought that the kiss was justified because the girl apologized to him the next day, because she had a boyfriend, and because it didn't mean anything. Oh, okay. He didn't feel the need to truly apologize, make anything up to me, or compromise with me or anything because he thought that I was always at fault. We've been together for over a year at this point. I then do the hardest thing of my entire life and break my own heart because he wouldn't do it on his own. I went on a break with my first true love and most special boy, the guy that will be in my heart forever. He was my first everything. Words can't describe what we had together. He then breaks up with me and tells everyone that I broke up with him because I couldn't handle him having a DUI. Months after the breakup, he sends me into an emotional spiral where I lost myself. Cried every morning and night and lost all of my friends for 8 months of my life, where he completely ignored me and shut me out. Didn't give me closure to this day, except for the times he told me that he loved me and missed me. He told me to prove that I loved him, but then he wouldn't make time for me to see him. I opened myself up to my core and wholeheartedly told him in person that I was in love with him, that he was the most special guy in my life. He hasn't contacted me since. He's now with a new girl who, in my opinion, is nothing compared to the person I was to him. But I guess he's happy with a dumber and uglier chick. We were the type of couple where we would hold hands in the car together and sing to our favorite bands. I would sing the girl parts and he would sing the guy parts. Maybe love will find me again. Story 16. Good guy James. I want to be that James someday. Anyways, so now for my own little tidbit of a story. I was dating my then love of my life. We lived a few hours apart, so I only really got to see her on the weekends. This was fine though. We made the best of it. Then one day, on Wednesday, I believe, she went to her best friend's female house for the night, so I didn't get to talk to her that evening. The next day we're on Skype and she mentions that she had been drinking at her friend's house and that it was a pretty fun night. Me, being the innocently curious one, asked her if anything crazy went down while they were drinking. She said not really, but then started laughing and explained that at one point during the night, she had burped into her friend's mouth. At first I was kind of shocked because that's pretty disgusting, but I brushed it off. Then after talking for another 10 to 15 minutes, it hit me. One does not simply burp into another person's mouth unless their mouths are basically touching each other, which means kissing. I asked her about it and she eventually admitted that she spent the better part of the night making out with her friend. Now for most guys this would be their dream, to have their girlfriend kissing another girl, but for me, it felt just as if she had cheated on me with a guy. I felt like the sanctity of what we had going on was completely disrespected. I didn't talk to her for quite a while after that. I think it might have also brought about the demise of our relationship because I just couldn't trust her anymore after that. I felt like she tore me in half. And before anyone asks, one of the reasons it felt like she had cheated on me, even though it was just her best friend, was because she had admitted to liking both guys and girls before we'd gone together. Story 17. So my college boyfriend was a writer and he also had a ton of mental issues, mostly dealing with his weight, so he had checked out of the relationship for a good long while and just kind of wasn't there mentally. I tried to help him, but in all fairness, I was probably a little demanding, wanting to be romanced and in a good relationship. I'm also very affectionate. I love hugs and kisses and general cuddling. This comes up later. So one day I get back from classes and see him writing, already has like a couple pages. I ask him what he's working on and tells a story, and I leave him alone to write and go make food or play video games. He comes out later and drops some pages in my lap and asks me to read it and tell him what I think. I leaf through the pages to see how many there are, and in the back I see one called cast of characters. Jamie is Mike, or him. Sam, Liz, me. Jane equals Jenna, his ex-girlfriend. So I started to read this story and it's like our life, down to our routine of eating sandwiches together in between classes. However, in the story, Sam, or me, is an ice princess who often looks through him and is very aloof. So when Jamie or he goes home on spring break, he ends up cheating on Sam by having intimacy with Jane or his ex in the back of his car. I read the story a couple times to be sure and came back into our room pretty much going, "What in the world is this?" He never really answered me, and then later I found out he joined up on eharmony.com because he was bored one day. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.